he will receive this back from the Lord. And masters, treat your slaves the same way, without threatening them, because you know that both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism with him. And we read that in slave and masters. We really truthfully don't have slaves today, do we? We don't own people. We don't do that. In reference to this, we have to take this set of Scripture, and how does it apply to our lives? How's the application there? And the application that we have is the workplace. Employees to employers. And you think about that for a minute. Employees to employers. Now, do they necessarily own us? No, they don't own us. We work for them. We have people that we answer to. We have people who are in, and we'll look at it in a minute, who are in authority over us. We always have, kids, remember this. You will always have somebody who is in authority over you. Always. It doesn't matter if, hey, hang on, I'm going to open up a business, I'm going to run my own stuff. Listen, there's somebody that you always answer to. Even if it's not an employer, you still are under the authority of God. And you know what? As an employer, you may have employees, and God has something to say about that too. But as employees, as Paul says here, slaves, that workplace isn't just some place that, it's just, I'm there for a couple hours every day. Listen, we spend a lot of time in our workplaces. We spend a lot of time around the people that we work with. We spend a lot of time doing the things that we're supposed to do each and every day. But you think about that for a minute. That's kind of difficult to think about. Because, listen, God has called us to be Spirit-filled employees. Or if you are an employer, Spirit-filled employers. Because we've submitted to God, and we have given our lives over to Him completely, fully. Here you go, God. It's all yours. It's not mine. I submit everything to you. And so we're Spirit-filled. And so we move that aspect as spirited individuals into Spirit-filled husbands and wives, and have Spirit-filled relationships in our marriage. We move from husbands and wives that are Spirit-filled into Spirit-filled families. Listen, it begins with our relationship with God, and it just spreads out from there. We're not just Spirit-filled individuals that leave it right there. Okay, God, here we go. I've spent my time with you, and that's all that I need to be Spirit-filled. No, it's into our relationship with our husband and our wife, our relationship with our children, into the relationship, into the world around us, into the place that we spend a lot of time in, and that's our workplace. It's our workplace. So we need to be Spirit-filled individuals. And I tell you what, as I studied this week, I came to realize that I'm not necessarily always a Spirit-filled individual when I step into work. I'll be honest. I don't always go in with the right attitude. I don't always step into the meetings, the offices, the shops that I walk into. I don't always step into those places Spirit-filled. So guess what? I got a good whooping this week. Because I like to do this. I have a tendency to look down and say, man, this job that I have, I don't like. I dislike it. It's not what I want to do. This is not where I want to be. This is not what I had envisioned in my life. But you know what? That's where God's placed me. It's where He's placed me for a purpose. And you're at where God has placed you for a purpose. And that's to be a Spirit-filled employee. That's to be a Spirit-filled believer. Because I promise you, when it makes the difference. That's when it makes the difference. When you have submitted your life to Christ and you are Spirit-filled, 100% sold out for Him. That's when it makes a difference. So as we look at this, we look at, it says obey. Now we've looked at this word obey several times. Now this isn't the word that Paul uses for husbands and wives. This is the word that he uses for us as Christians, being obedient to God, as children being obedient to parents, as one who has a superior and you are a employee or you are a child, somebody who is inferior. Okay? So that word is hupakuo. In our application this morning, it's for employees to employers. You see, to be obedient, that means that we step into our workplace and we are obedient to the tasks that our employers give to us. We may not like it. We may not, I really don't want to do it. Listen, there are things that our employers tell us to do that here's the mindset that we need to have. Because there's things in my job that, my supervision, my lead people, my foreman or whatever you want to call it, will instruct me to do it. I'm not going to whoop you about doing it. I promise you that's the same thing in your job. You're not just real whoopy about going in and saying, hey, you know what, this is what I come to do. Listen, this is what you need to do. I don't know about that. I don't feel like doing it today. That's not on my agenda. That word obedient means that you respond, and it's a response that is quickly done. And it's done in submission. Okay, here we go. This is a task at hand. Okay, I'm going to carry it out quickly and to the best of my ability. That's what that word obedience is there. That word obey is, okay, yes sir, yes ma'am, here we go. I'm going to do it, I'm going to get it done, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. That's what that is. That's what that means. So when our employers come to us, when our supervisors come to us, when our lead people come to us, when our bosses come to us, whatever you want to call it, when they come to us and say, hey, this is what I need you to do, these are the tasks that I need you to carry out, you're like, okay, that's what I'm going to do today, and that's what I have to carry out. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. No questions asked. But really, this is what I had planned for today. Well, this is what's on my agenda for today. Well, I was going to sit there and play on my phone a whole lot today, or I was going to sit there and do something else today. Well, I've got this. Listen, it doesn't matter what our agenda is. We're there to work for them. We're there to carry out what they tell us to carry out. They have a task. It's our job to carry out. That's what that obedience is. You see, in Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, it says this. It says, whatever you do it from the heart as something done for the Lord and not for people. When you come to work, everyone, it's not that, man, I'm doing this because I'm going to get a paycheck. You're doing it because you love Jesus. Have you looked at your job like that? I'm not just coming to work because it's there to make me money or fill this void that I have at the time of my day. Because I promise you, I think I could fill up the time that I spend out there at my job a whole lot better than with that. I could think of a million different things that I could be doing. But you know what? I have that time to spend there doing what they've instructed me to do, to be obedient to what they have instructed me to do, not because it's the thing to do, just because it's okay. It's because I love Jesus. Because I'm doing it in service to Him. We've got a lot of people in this world that think, man, I've got the sorriest job in the world. I don't know how I got stuck with this job. I don't know. Listen, I've done some pretty bad jobs in my life. Okay? I have scooped poop. I have worked in sewers. I have done some pretty nasty stuff. I've had my hands in all sorts of kind of, you don't want to know. Okay? But you know what? I have come to the realization, as bad as those jobs were, I needed to step into those jobs, not because, okay, it's something to fill my time up with or it provides for my family. I step into those jobs because I love Jesus. Yeah. Because it gives me the opportunity to serve Him. Do you realize when you step into your workplace and you're being obedient to Him that you're not working for that employer? You're working for Jesus. And we need to have that mindset. That we're not just working for that employer because it gives me a paycheck, but I'm working and serving Jesus. Why? Because it's fulfilling what He's called in my life. Number one, to work. Number two is this, is that I'm fulfilling what He's called and being obedient in my life to what He's called me to do, and that's to bring people to know Him. And there's no better way than going and working and living out your life and being obedient to your employer. That shows people, wow, hang on. He's in that job. They give him the worst job on the planet. They always give him the worst things to do. And he just carries them out with a smile and a whistle and a song in his heart, and he's just as happy to do it. Or she's just as happy to do it. And it's the most wonderful thing. Wow. And people come up and ask, why are you so happy? You're over here scraping gum off the floor. You're cleaning up underneath tables. You're having to clean toilets. I've done that too. And people see you and they ask, why in the world are you so happy? And they're cleaning toilets. Because I'm serving Jesus. It's not just a paycheck. It's not just, oh, here we go. Listen, I'm serving Jesus. I'm being obedient to what He's called me to. Look at it. It says, obey your human masters with fear and trembling. Listen, it's not saying with fear and trembling because you're scared of your boss. And sometimes bosses like to do that, don't they? Boy, I'll just fire you right now if you don't do what I tell you. Yeah, I've had those. Well, if you don't do exactly what I told you, listen, they'll sit there, man, you're going to have to do that. We're going to have to get out more production than this. You're going to have to do all this and that. While they're sitting over there twiddling their thumbs, right? I've had bosses like that. But here's the thing. You're not scared. You're not in fear and trembling of that boss. You're in fear and trembling of Jesus. Why? Because you respect Him. You honor Him. You're in awe of Him. That's what that word fear is. It's in awe of. Why? Because you're in the presence of Jesus. You want to be obedient to your human masters in fear and trembling. Not because you're afraid of them, because you want to honor and glorify and be in awe of Jesus. That's hard to do. Because we come in with this attitude of, I'm just here to collect a paycheck. Trust me, I know a lot of folks like that. I know a lot of Christian folks like that. We'll walk into work every day. Well, I'm just here to collect a paycheck. When we're called to be obedient to our human masters. And here's the thing. Here's what I found interesting. It says, slaves, obey your human masters with fear and trembling. That's that awe and just reverence of Jesus. It says, in sincerity of your hearts. You know, we've all got those folks that go into work. Yeah, they go into work and they like to kind of buddy up with the boss, right? They kind of, well, I won't say what they like to do. They just need to clean their face every once in a while. They like to do that. They like to get in there and they like to be buddy-buddy, and they do all these different things because it gets them where they want to go. You see, that word there, sincerity, is this. It means this. When it's talking about sincerity, it's it gives you this picture of an unfolded cloth that is smoothed out, that it's perfect. There it is. There's no folds in it. There's no wrinkles in it. There's nothing that's hidden in there. That word sincerity means that there's nothing hidden. And so it says, obey them in sincerity of your heart. That your heart is without a fold, without a wrinkle. It's pure, it's smooth. It means that you go into work every day without a hidden agenda. That means that you go into work to work instead of being self-seeking, self-satisfying, self-gratifying. I'm coming in here so that I can do what I can do. So, hey, I'll be buddy with the boss so I can sit in there and talk to him for hours on end while everybody else is doing their job. Or I'm doing this so I can get close to the boss so that when it's time to promote somebody, hey, I'm there in his face all the time. Instead of letting your work and your work ethic and you being obedient to Jesus and doing what He has commanded you to do, and that's to obey your master, letting your work performance sit there and move you up. Trust me, I know all about that. I've seen it time and time and time again. My workplace, almost always it's the buddies. It's like they'll take the sorriest person in the shop and, oh, here you go, let's give him a job because he ain't going to do anything else. That's what it looks like. The person that's working real, real hard, boy, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They get overlooked a whole bunch. Hardest working person in the shop. But here's the thing. Those people can go to work and have sincerity of heart. There's no folds, it's opened up. There's no wrinkles, there's nothing hidden. There's not a hidden agenda in their heart. Well, I'm coming out here so I can get ahead, I can step on people, I can make people do what I want to do, and I can just sit back and relax. That's not the point of going to work. The point of going to work is to serve Jesus. Do we go to work each and every morning with that sincerity of heart? There's no wrinkle, there's no fold, there's nothing. It's smooth and clean and pure, and here you go. It's all out in the open so everybody can see it. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm coming to work. This is our promise. It says, slaves, obey your human masters with fear and trembling, with that awe of Jesus and the sincerity of your heart as you would Christ. Listen, you're not serving those human masters, you're serving Jesus. Just like you come before Him every morning and say, okay, what's on my agenda today? What's my task? Let's line this up. What am I supposed to do today? You see, those human masters have authority in our lives. We have to think of it like that. Even those sorry, no good supervisors or sorry, no good leaders or foremen or bosses or whoever you answer to at your job. Those people like that, they come to you and you're, listen, how in the world did they ever get to be a supervisor? How did they become somebody's boss? How did they do this? Listen, those people are there because God put them there. Did you ever think about that? The reason why they are there and they are masters, they're your employer, your boss, or whatever, is because God has put them in authority over you. Think about that for a minute. You see, God has a lot to say about the authority that He puts above us, doesn't He? That they're there for a reason. They're there because He has put them there. And even if we have supervisors, bosses, leaders, foremen, whatever it is, the reason that they're there is because He's put them there, even if they're not Christians. There's still the authority in our life. And it doesn't do us any good if we're not obedient to them. Why? Because we can't be a witness to them. Listen, I've seen people who have berated Christians and put them down and said, oh, you're a Christian or what, and given them bad jobs. And some of the jobs that I've had, they've given them bad jobs because, oh, they're the Christians. And they're not buddy-buddy with me. They're not willing to sit over here and talk about this or do that. Oh, he's going to go out there. Listen, it's no better feeling to go into work and to be obedient to what God has called us to do and to be a witness to them. Say, you know what? I'm doing this because Jesus has called me to. I'm being obedient to the nasty task that you have given me because Jesus has called me to. Not because you demand it, not because you require it, but because Jesus has told me to be obedient to the authority that's in my life. Because we're all going to have that authority in our life. Whether it's a wonderful, blessed job, whether it's a job that I'm just trying to make it right now and get along, talking. So God puts me in something better. I've had those jobs. Be obedient to the authority that God has put in your life. Why? Because you're serving Him while you're also serving them. Because it's a testimony in their life. We need to be able to go into work with that kind of an attitude. Not the attitude that we have, man, it's Monday morning. This week, Tuesday morning, I've got to get up, go to work, and go serve all these people and do all this. And listen, we ought to go up Tuesday morning and be like, you know what? I'm getting up and I'm going to work, not serving those people, but I'm going and I'm serving Jesus. Have a good attitude. Have an attitude of a Spirit-filled employee. That's the attitude that we need to have. That we're just full, we're overflowing. That river is shooting through us. You know what? When we're Spirit-filled, man, think about how that can change your workplace. How that can change your boss's perception of you. Instead of always griping and complaining, well, I don't want to do that. That's not on my agenda. That's not what I had prepared for today. Listen, don't ask 1.5 million questions and just try to tick them off. Well, just go on and shut up, do what you want to do. No. Come in and say, okay, what's my task for today? I'm going to move on and I'm going to go through whatever you give me to do. I don't care what it is. I'm going to be obedient to what you've called me to do. What I'm supposed to do. I'm on your time. Let's do that. But I'm going to serve Jesus all along the way. I'm going to be Spirit-filled. Man, if we walked into work and if we had workplaces that were full of Spirit-filled believers, man, how it would change our workplaces. Man, how it would change our lives. Man, you'd see things work and move and change. But it starts with us. We've got to be Spirit-filled. We've got to have the attitude of a Spirit-filled believer. Look at verse 6. It says, don't work only while watched as people pleasers, but as slaves of Christ. Do God's will from your heart. Think about this. We've got to have that attitude, but you know what? We've got to have this thing called integrity. I see a lot of this too. That we only work, and I've seen this a lot, through my short time working, that we see this a whole lot. That you only work when the boss is around. When somebody pops up around the corner. Uh-oh, here it goes. Get to work. You slack off all day long, but when somebody important's coming around or something's going on, boy, you're going to jump up and you're going to act like, man, I've been working all day. It's so hard, it's so hot. You make sure that you've got your face that's greasy, or that you've got stuff done or scattered all over your desk to make it look like you're working. Coming in my workplace, I've got stuff scattered everywhere. And it's not just because I'm trying to make it look like I'm Think about it. That's what people do. They only want to be people pleasers. They only want to work when somebody's around, when they can be seen. God's Word says don't do that. God's Word says this. It says, don't work only while being watched as people pleasers. That's pretty specific. That is pretty specific. That means you have integrity as a Spirit-filled believer, as a Spirit-filled follower of Christ. As you step into the workplace, you've got to have integrity. This world is not full of integrity. Look at it. God wouldn't have had something. Listen, you would think that this was written today. It must have happened back then too. Imagine that. That just shows you the validity of God's Word never changes. That it's the same. Think about it. People have always, sin enters the world, they're going to slack off. They're not going to have the integrity to do what God has called them to do and do. Listen, and here's the bad thing about it. We see the people of the world and we expect them to behave how God is telling us to behave. We expect the world to behave like God is telling us to behave, and we won't even behave like that. We won't even have the integrity to do what God has called us to do. To sit there and work all day long. As long as we're on the time clock, we ought to be doing what we've been instructed to do. Now, if we've got downtime, it's on the employer. But don't just work when the boss steps around the corner and looks at you. Get your head down and get to working. Don't work as people pleasers. Our world is full of people pleasers. Our world is full of people pleasers. We're not supposed to be people pleasers. We're supposed to be Christ pleasers. It says, don't work only while being watched. And you know what? Here's the bad thing about it. We as Christians, we bring that into God's house. We bring that into His family. To His workplace too sometimes. Oh, we're only good at doing things as when people are watching us. Think about that. We want to be watched. Oh, hang on, I'm going to slack off, but when somebody's watching me, boy, I'm going to be gung-ho, all out it. Full blown. No, we need to be doing that. Whether at home, whether at church, whether at work, it doesn't matter. We need to be going all out serving Christ. Not just when people are watching. Not when we get a pat on the back. Here you go, that's an attaboy. You get that handshake. Man, you're doing such a great job. Don't be people pleasers. Don't only work when somebody's watching. Work all the time. It says, but as slaves of Christ, do God's will from your heart. See, it's God's will for us to be workers. That's what God created us to be, as workers. So do God's will from your heart. No folds, no wrinkles, open up flat. Do God's will from your heart. God's will ought to be flowing out of us. It ought to be in our workplace. It ought to be evident around us. Not just working when people are watching. Look at verse 7. It says this. It says, serve with a good attitude as to the Lord and not to people. How many of you go to work with a good attitude? I can't say I always go to work with a good attitude. I can't say that I always go to work with, oh wow, it's going to be a wonderful, great day. I'll walk into work. Leave me alone. Don't talk to me. Let me get to doing what I've got to do. I walk into work with oh wow, this is a great day that God's given me to be able to serve you and to be able to serve the people around me. Leave me alone, shut up, and just let me do what I got to do. Get out of Sometimes that's my attitude. I'll be honest. And that's not the attitude that we as Spirit-filled believers need to bring into the workplace. That's not the, because you think about it, you've got people who are all around you, and they are watching you. And they're not just watching your work, but they're watching your integrity. They're watching your attitude. So we need to walk into these places with a good, godly attitude. Why? Because we're not serving people, we're serving God. We are serving God. This is just where He has chosen to place us. It's where He has chosen to place us. Verse 8 says this, knowing that whatever good each one does, slave or free, he will receive this back from the Lord. But think about it. If we are Spirit-filled believers, who go to work and are obedient to the human employees, the human masters that God has put over us, there's going to be a reward. There's a reward. You're like, oh wow, I get more of my paycheck? No. Are you going to reap benefits from it? Yes. You know what? It may not be earthly benefits. You may not ever reap an earthly benefit of doing what God has called you to do in the place that He has placed you and working under the authority that He has put over you. You may never see one red cent added to your paycheck. You may work for years and years and years doing exactly what God has called you to do. You go in working with integrity, working with a good attitude, working with all these people, and you're being the best witness that you can possibly be, and you work for years and years, and you think, man, what is my reward? Because it doesn't get any easier. You've got it. God gives you that promise. I believe that if you do exactly what God calls you to do, that's just a jewel in your crown. You will be rewarded in the end. But you know what the greatest thing about that is that you get a jewel in your crown. Oh wow, it's shiny and pretty. This is what I've been working for all these years. No, who really gives a care about that? Yes, it's a wonderful thing to get that reward for Jesus. That reward, oh wow, I'll get an extra jewel in my crown. You know what? You're serving Him. Why? Because that all is given back in honor and glory, all to Him. Listen, I don't work for this earthly reward. I work for Him because I'm going to get to say, you know what? I'm praising You all through my life. The reward I gain is something that I get to offer back to Him. Wow. That's the kind of reward that I'm seeking. I'm seeking the kind of reward that I can offer back to Him, that I can say, you know what? This is what I get, and I want to give it to Jesus. It's not like, oh, wow, I get to wear my crown, check me out, look at everybody. I got that, hey, I was a good employee award. It's kind of like these things that, if we're being honest, these things, the things of the world kind of enter into our minds, man. If I'm a good employee and I do all these things that God gives me and these wonderful things, I'm going to get this handshake and it'll be wonderful. Listen, there's these things at my job that we have the top guy come out and he shakes our hand and says, here you go, and he usually has something in his hand, and you look down and, oh, wow, check this out. It's nice and shiny and pretty, and you know what? You can put it on a desk, you can put it somewhere, you can put it in your pocket, but you know what it's worth? Who said it? It's worth nothing. One of these days, for all the things that you're doing, that God has called you to do, being obedient, having integrity, having a good attitude, and you're walking into the workplace as a Spirit-filled believer, you walk in, and one of these days, you're going to hear, well done. Good and faithful servant. You're going to receive a crown. And it's not one that you're going to be like, wow, that's amazing. Look at this. And you're not going to get to walk around heaven and say, look at all the things. Listen, it'll be something that you place back at His feet. It'll be something that you place at His feet. And say, thank you for letting me be able to serve you while serving others. That's the reward that we'll get. That's the kind of reward we ought to seek. And then verse 9. Oh, it's not just employees, is it? It's employers. It says, and masters, treat your slaves the same way. Well, guess what? If you're an employer, on one of these days you're going to be an employer. Treat your employees the same way. Number one, you ought to be Spirit-filled when you walk into your job. You ought to treat them with goodness, kindness, compassion. Why? Because that's the authority that's above you. That's how He treats you. Jesus treats us with goodness and compassion, kindness. You ought to treat them with integrity. You ought to have a good attitude. It says masters, treat them the same way. See, it says without threatening them. When you think about it, back in the day, when this was written in the Roman period, there was about 6 million slaves in the Roman Empire at this point in time. And you know what masters had a tendency to do? Well, if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm just going to kill you. I know some employers that would like to say that to their employees. If you don't do what I tell you to do, if you're not going to do your job, I'm just going to kill you. Well, He's telling masters this without threatening. You see, today we say it like this. We say it like this. Well, you know what? If you don't do your job, if you're not like so-and-so over here, who's sitting in the office twiddling his thumbs talking to me and doing all that. Well, look at all the stuff he's doing. Or look at Joe Bob over there. Every time I walk around the corner, he's over there working. Look at all the stuff I've been doing while Joe Bob's been sitting there. Don't threaten them. Well, you know what? I will just fire you. I'll take away your livelihood. I'll take away your life. And that's what a lot of employers like to do. Threatening them. You know what? I'll just threaten them. Oh, I'm going to fire you. I'm going to do this. We're going to do that. I'll give you the bad jobs. Listen, don't threaten them. It says, treat your slaves the same way. Upright, with integrity, with a good attitude. Expect obedience out of them. But treat them like that. Treat them the way, if you're Spirit-filled, man, you ought to be treating them the way that Christ treats you. Why? Because He's the authority above you. He gives you that example. It says, without threatening, because you know that both their master and yours is in heaven. And there's no favoritism with it. You see, Jesus doesn't treat us with favoritism. He doesn't have His favorite kid that He brings along. God doesn't say, you know what? I like Brian a whole lot better than I like Rachel. Actually, it would be the other way around. If you did play favorites. But God doesn't do that. And employers shouldn't do that either. They shouldn't say, oh, hey, you know what? Well, Joe Bob goes fishing with me over here on the weekends, and so we're going to give him the good jobs and do all this stuff, and we're going to, we're buddies. We're going to give this guy over here, he doesn't go with me. He doesn't come to the break room and cut up with us like that. He doesn't sit around for all those jokes that we like to tell, or these stories that we had, what we were doing over the weekend and all this stuff. He doesn't take place in that. So we're going to give him the bad jobs. Listen, there's no favoritism. As employers, we should treat everyone the same. There's no difference. It's the same day in, day out. No favoritism. Spirit-filled workplace. Spirit-filled workplace. What if we treated our workplace like that? What if we walked into work, whenever we walk into work, whether it's tomorrow morning, whether it's Tuesday morning, what if we walked into work like that? What if we said, you know what, I have submitted to God, but I haven't submitted to Him to be Spirit-filled when I walk into my job Monday morning, Tuesday morning. Oh, I've got a great Spirit-filled family. Listen, that circle ought to expand into the workplace. Why? Because we're teaching our children. Listen, I'm not just like, we ought to be consistent day in, day out. Listen, this is how I am with God. This is how I am with my husband and my wife. This is how I am with my children. This is how I am with the people who are in my workplace. This is how I am with people at Walmart, at Target, at Spring Market, at the doctor's office. Wherever we go, we ought to be consistent. Every single place we go, we ought to be Spirit-filled. But there's so many times that we're not. There's so many times that we don't walk into our jobs Spirit-filled. Wow. Submitting to God and being Spirit-filled, it changes our lives. Being Spirit-filled changes our marriage. Being Spirit-filled changes our relationship with our children and our families. Man, how in the world would being Spirit-filled change our workplaces? Man. I'll be the first to confess. I need to walk into my workplace Spirit. As I come for invitation this morning, my question for you is this. Have you submitted to God to be Spirit-filled when you walk into your workplace? Have you submitted to God that you are going to be Spirit-filled every morning? Be the same all day long. Being obedient to your boss. Knowing that God is the one that's in control. Having the integrity to do what they've called you to do, the task that you're on. To have good attitudes, not because they're paying you, but because you are serving God, serving Jesus all along the way. Not expecting an earthly reward, but for the promise of that reward for the day to come. As employers, how we are to do the same thing as the employees. Have integrity, have good attitudes, be obedient to the authority that's placed over us. To be able to serve our Master, who is Jesus, and serve Him. Have you submitted? Have you submitted your workplace? Spirit. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you and Lord, I praise you for the wonderful day that you've given to us, Lord. Lord, thank you for letting us be able to look into your word and be able to see the things that you would have for us. Lord, thank you for letting us be Spirit-filled. Lord, help us not to just be Spirit-filled in our relationship with you. Lord, not just to be Spirit-filled within our home and our family, or within these four walls, Lord. Lord, help us to be Spirit-filled in our workplace and the surrounding world around us. Lord, let it just ooze out of us. Let it flow through us. Lord, I pray that as we seek you, Lord, we can have a Spirit-filled life. Lord, I thank you. Lord, I praise you for all that you continue to do in the lives of your people, in the life of your body and your church. Spirit-filled. Don't forget, Bible study on Wednesday night. Be here for that. If you haven't been here for the last couple of weeks, you'll get to see last week's video, because we've been watching videos for the last couple of weeks. I will post that on Facebook this evening. Because if you've missed out, you've missed something good. You've missed something really, really good. And it's changed some folks' outlooks on the things that we've been looking at, seeing God's opening our eyes to some different things. So continue to be in prayer for what God has for us as we move forward in the things that He has called us to do. Don't forget, if you haven't seen, and we've got them up here too, there are some things that Linda and Jean are asking for contributions to Darian's Dream Pantry Ministry. And so if you would like to contribute to that, you can bring it up to the church. They've got a box out here in the hallway, or you can give them a call and let them know, and I'm sure that they would meet you up here, and I'm just putting that out there. And I'm sure they will meet you out here. I'm not real sure when that would be, but you just get in contact with them, and so they will have some things that they can continue to do this ministry as they're collecting things and they're doing stuff and they're continuing to go and visit and to distribute food out into the world around us. Yes, ma'am.
List out here on this table.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a list out. That's what I was saying. Yeah, there's a list out there on the table, and there's one up here of the things that y'all are needing. And so you can look at that list, and those are the items that they're needing to be able to continue and to do this ministry. And listen, they are doing an amazing work in distributing this food, because it's not just food that they're distributing the love of Christ, the love of Jesus to the people that they meet and the people that they're ministering to. So continue to pray for that ministry. And don't forget, be here. Don't forget to be here at 10:15 Sunday mornings to be a part of that time of family fellowship, that time of family togetherness, and being able to pray for one another and to be able to lift up praises, and so that we can pray for one another. Be here for that. Don't skimp on it. Okay? Don't say, no, I don't. Be a part of it, because that's part of worship. All right. Brother Bill, would you dismiss us, please, sir?
Love you this country today, and we thank you for the opportunity to come to have